Hello. So, I'm by no means a pastel artist teacher, um, but I wanted to just do a few videos on pastels because I think that where myself, maybe some others who are sort of crossing over and having a little play with pastels, pastels aren't really um, noticed for their beautifulness, really. Um, they come in all sorts of shapes and sizes. Um, They're very fragile, so you have to be really careful. I've dropped, I don't know how many of these, and they've crumbled on the floor, and yeah, I've had to be really careful. You can also get them like square, all sorts of different brands, um, different qualities. Yeah, I broke that one the other day, Selenium. Um, they're very expensive. They're very expensive, and so they're by no means are they chalk or crayons. Um, we might joke about it, but they're not. They're actually pure pigment. If you get a decent brand of pastels, they're like pure pigment. Whereas a lot of other mediums will have like their ground in them, so they'll have like a base of oil or honey or gum arabic, which, depending on the ratios that the companies use, will depend on how much pigment is actually used. So some mediums will be very vibrant, whereas others not so vibrant, and you have to use more pigment. With pastels, like I was just saying, they are pure pigment, so that does reflect on how careful the artist has to be when using them, and the price, I suppose, of the materials that need to be kind of like got back when selling the art. Um, but I wanted to show you a little bit of magic because pastels are fantastic. You don't just use normal paper for pastels, you use something called pastel matte, which is like a very fine um, wet and dry sandpaper, like the old wet and dry, and it kind of reminds me of that. So I'll just put like a base down of, you probably can't even see, it's like a very sort of plum colour and more of a cooler purple around the edge. And I'm going in with some alcohol, um, because you can turn pastels into paint quite easily. So I'm going to do, like, because I don't want the yellow. I don't like yellow on my paper, but when you buy a pad of pastel paper to practice with, you're not going to get the gorgeous colours that you can buy when you actually are doing it. So I'm going to basically turn my paper another colour. So I'm going to start on the inner part and work my way around. I'm just using like one of my old acrylic brushes. It's a really cheap brush. It's a fan brush. I don't know why I'm telling you that because I'm not. It's just a Daling Rowley cheap one. So I'm just going round and allowing a little bit of texture to go on. Okay. Now, I'm not a teacher at pastels. If you want a master, I can point you in the right direction. In no means. I'm trying to push pastels forward into 2026 because I think they've been missed. I think they're missed by a lot of people. Maybe a lot of collectors are a bit scared that the fragility of them, and not really sure how to um, what's the word I'm looking for? My brain. I've given up caffeine, so how to display them best. So they're no more fragile than a watercolour. Well, they are, but watercolour, okay? Anyone who's bought my art off me, I would have always said the same thing. This has to be mounted and framed behind glass. Now, I know a lot of people are trying to bring watercolour into the 2026 and doing different things, but I think it's best behind glass for I don't know how many reasons. It's water-based pigment, and you can reactivate watercolour with water. You know, you've watched me lift. So is if you know you store it in a wet room or someone splashes water somewhere, you're at risk always of damaging. Just as you are with oils, they degrade over time with the coatings and things go orange. So it's a very, very wonderful, wonderful medium to work with, because it's very similar in the way of watercolour, because you really want to mount and frame them. So there's nothing special to be done with them. If you take them to be professionally framed, all the better. If you don't, then you just mount and frame them. The artist will always use something like, no, I say always, this is called like a fixative spray, you know, and I believe from the research and stuff that I'm learning online that a lot of artists use these in between their layers so that the bottom layers don't shift as they're putting a new layer on. This is a fixative spray, so although it does fix to a degree your the pastel to the grain, the grit of the paper, and it gives it some protection. A lot of artists don't put this on their top layers because it can darken the highlights, and I suppose because it's the last thing that you put on as a pastel artist, you don't really want darkening too much. So to that degree they are a little bit fragile, but you're fine, just don't do that on it. You know, if you receive a piece of art that's been done by an artist, just hold it carefully at the sides, at the edges. You're putting greasy fingers directly on it. You're not going to do that with any piece of bespoke art, are you? If you're going to a fine artist, so don't worry about the pastels being fragile. They're very, very nice. They're quite touchy-feely. In fact, it wouldn't ruin it too much just to, get a little bit off. It's fine. But you just wouldn't, start licking it and put it in the fridge or leave it out like this. No one's going to buy fine art and then do that. So I don't think there's any real concerns with regards to storing. I'm coming up with 2 different ideas on how to post them out to you. One of them is glassine paper, which I bought several sheets of. So I'll just show you. This one I'm hand delivering, so I'm not worrying about it too much. So I've wrapped it in glassine paper. That's going to be hand delivered by myself to my commissioner. So she will store it and she's going to have it mounted and framed. So if you purchase from me, you have the opportunity for me to I'll get it mounted for you. Obviously there's a cost in that, or I will secure it with glassine paper. So it will come stuck down to something with the glassine over the top to keep it nice and safe for you. And this isn't the tracing paper, it's like greaseproof paper. Any of my kitchen gals will recognise it's much shinier than our kitchen greaseproof paper, so it keeps it nice and safe, and from as much as I have found so far, stops it from smudging. So that's quite good. And pressing down the last layers as well is quite handy with that. So yeah, so I've just gone over a couple of things there, haven't I? I was putting a base layer, changed colour of my paper, because with the pastel paper, what I found is that you have only got so much you can put on there before you've filled the grit with pastel, and if you turn your underpainting to fluid, gives you a bit more room. Very handy tip that I picked up. Cannot remember who. I think it was Cafe Monet or Monet Cafe on Facebook, not Facebook, YouTube. So yeah, that's what I'm doing. So that's what I wanted to talk about, really. The wonderfulness of pastels, the fear that might be arising around purchasing of pastels and their worth. I always try to get my work valued, whether that's valued personally or by a gallery owner of some sort. So trying to, we always try to keep it fair. So that's what's going on with me at the moment. So I might come back and do a live. Might.